Hello everyone, I'm Yazan Ibrahim, or as some of you might know me, Yazan Abu Ghosh. Today we're going to dive into a fascinating and essential topic from Chapter 5, Protection of Information Assets. Part A, Information Asset Security and Control, 5.6, Data Classification. If you are a seasoned auditor or just curious to understand how information systems into business environments, you've come to the right place. Let's begin. Unlocking the power of information asset classification, a comprehensive strategy. Let's take a journey into one of the most critical elements of information security, classifying information assets. This process, often misunderstood as just another bureaucratic function, is actually the key to tailoring robust security measures while ensuring that the organization's resources are neither overprotected nor exposed to unnecessary risks. But what does it really entail, and how does classification interweave itself into the fabric of business objectives? Let's map it out step by step. The first step, cataloging information assets. Every organization's information security starts with a clear, detailed inventory of its information assets. This foundational step is like taking an inventory of treasures locked in a massive vault. You need to know what's there before deciding how valuable each piece is or how it should be safeguarded. But not all treasures have the same worth. Some can shape the success or failure of business operations, while others are routine records with relatively little importance. Understanding this complexity, organizations assign classifications based on two main factors: sensitivity, how secret or confidential the information is, and criticality, how essential it is for achieving business goals. These classifications form the foundation for setting security protocols and rules around access. Now imagine what happens in the absence of this framework. It's a bit like storing priceless artifacts alongside old newspapers. Both are treated the same and placed under the same mediocre lock, leaving the valuable pieces vulnerable to theft and the organization wasting resources on less important documents. By establishing thoughtful classifications, businesses strike the right balance, guarding assets appropriately without overspending on unnecessary controls. Who manages this process? Responsibility matters. In any organization, there's a definite chain of accountability for managing information. The information owner stands at the forefront. This is the person who should establish the assets classification, leaning on clearly defined data classification and handling policies. For example, let's say your organization's classification scheme includes categories such as public, private, and sensitive. The job of the information owner is to analyze each piece of data, think of it in terms of these lanes, and slot it into the appropriate one. Public information. These are assets designed for wide distribution, like company brochures or marketing communications. Sharing this information widely doesn't introduce any risks. Private information, this encompasses internal documents like policies, procedures, or general correspondence. While it's not intended for public consumption, it's not top secret either. Sensitive information. Now we come to the crown jewels: unpublished financial results, proprietary formulas, and trade secrets. Exposure here can lead to significant business losses or reputational damage. Sounds simple so far? Good. But determining classifications isn't the only responsibility of the data owner. They also play a key role in approving access privileges, and more on that in a moment. From classification to access control, once classifications are in place, they serve as the blueprint for assigning who gains access to what. Controls are crafted to ensure that the more sensitive or critical a piece of information is, the more restricted it becomes. Consider these pillars of data control. Who owns the asset? Clear identification of who is responsible for an asset. This ensures accountability for its security. Access approval, defining who has the authority to grant access to information and determining what depth of access is appropriate. Granular security controls. For sensitive data, protections extend beyond access and include encryption, secure storage, and continuous monitoring. Let's visualize this with an example. A programmer tasked with building a new app needs access to test data. However, granting them permissions to live, production datasets would pose significant risks, both in terms of regulatory compliance and operational safety. A structured classification and control environment prevents this potential lapse, ensuring programmers stick to what they need for their role. The varying levels of classification. Most organizations designate 3 to 5 sensitivity levels for their data. Why? Because the system must strike the right balance, being detailed enough to reflect differences in sensitivity, yet not so complex that it becomes overwhelming to enforce consistently. It's important to remember that an overly elaborate classification system will tend to break down as users struggle to apply it effectively. Legal and practical implications. Classification isn't just an internal housekeeping effort, it must align with external priorities too. Enterprises often face mandates to maintain the privacy, confidentiality, and availability of specific data due to legal, regulatory, contractual, or ethical requirements. Whether it involves protecting customer data due to privacy laws or safeguarding proprietary information under confidentiality agreements, an aligned data framework ensures that all compliance obligations are accounted for. Why everything needs a label. Imagine an organization where documents lack clear labels specifying their classification. A shared folder contains sensitive financial forecasts alongside trivial memos. In a rush to meet a deadline, an employee erroneously forwards a confidential file to a third-party vendor. Suddenly, the organization finds itself vulnerable, whether to intellectual property theft, reputation damage, or even social engineering scams. By assigning clear sensitivity labels, organizations minimize these risks and avoid unintentional leaks. Users become empowered to follow security guidelines confidently because they know the rules applied to each type of information. The case against complacency. Without a data classification scheme, even the most sophisticated security protocols can falter. Social engineering attackers, for example, often exploit the lack of clarity present in disorganized environments. Posing as legitimate employees or external partners, attackers can manipulate unwitting staff into sharing confidential files simply because those employees weren't aware of specific protections or disclosure prohibitions. Proper classification counters this thin edge of vulnerability. It ensures that sensitive information is clearly identified and that users know their responsibilities for safeguarding it. Closing the loop, uniform treatment for data. Here's the genius of classification. By assigning data-specific categories or levels, organizations standardize their treatment. Instead of inventing a custom policy for each piece of information, they apply uniform, predetermined rules. For example, once a document is classified as sensitive, all systems know what this means. Every platform, from document storage systems to email servers, follows predefined handling protocols for sensitive data. This consistency eliminates ambiguity and reinforces security through process automation. To wrap up, information asset classification isn't just a technical task, it's a visionary strategy that underpins strong cybersecurity and effective governance. From correctly identifying data ownership to crafting sound access controls, every step builds a sturdier scaffolding upon which businesses can thrive securely. And as information continues to flow faster and deeper through the veins of modern organizations, the role of proper classification will only grow more central. Thank you for watching, and as always, continue learning. Stay curious, and we'll see you next video.